Hello, and welcome to Can't Find My Brain for the Fog with Kendra
and Gina, discussing love, loss, and life after.
All right, so we are back with week 7, and we're going to try to talk a little bit about mental health. Maybe talk about some of the things that have helped us. And we're not mental health experts by any means.
Not by any means.
Always consult a professional. I will apologize again about my voice because, spring in Kentucky, like I said before, makes my allergies flare up and it makes me have a little bit of voice troubles here. So,
Kentucky has 2 seasons, basketball season and allergy season. That's true.
It's valid. It's valid. And so as far as mental health, it's such a big topic, and I feel like we're in some of these groups on Facebook, and there seem to be different camps. There are people that are, like me, that are pro therapy, pro this, and then you have those people that are just staunchly against it.
Yeah, anti.
Yeah, and I guess I can't. I have a hard time understanding that. Just because I know how much my therapist has helped me, and I know how much I needed it. But I do know a lot of people in my life that probably could benefit from therapy and don't go.
Yeah.
I
think I grew up kind of thinking that if you needed that, there was a weakness, which is so not true. But I think that's just the way I grew up. Nobody said that to me, but...
well, I think you find that implication a lot in the church, unfortunately.
Yes, I agree with that.
A lot of... And that's changing.
Like, you're just not believing enough.
That is changing. But there were a lot of churches that held on to that idea that your faith is strong enough. If you just have enough faith, you'll get through it. And that's not not healthy. That's not true. God gave us a brain, gave us doctors for a reason.
Yeah, and there's dark, I think the first time somebody broached the subject of a counselor to me, I was at dinner with my boss and his wife, one of my bosses, and he said, have you ever thought about talking to a counselor? I was like, do I need to? And then the second time it was brought up, one of my good friends that helped me plan Tim's funeral brought up a counselor, and I said, I think there's a normal depression that happens after grief. I said, if I look like I'm getting stuck, please tell me. But I kind of resisted for a while, and I don't know if I needed it or not, but I did go to counseling, and I'm like you, I loved her. Yeah. And
I still go. And so for my background, or my reasoning for going was a little bit different than that. Like, I do agree that I felt, there's a natural depression. That's completely normal, completely valid. If you don't feel a little depression, I'd be concerned about it.
Right.
You've lost your husband. You should be a little bit in the dumps, right? Like, that's valid. But in my case, it was not necessarily the depression that was getting to me. It was the emotional baggage and the anxiety. So, I mentioned in the previous episode that healthcare was a big issue for me because, and I think I've mentioned this before, I had a fight because my insurance was connected to Jim's work. And it took a good month for me to actually get the paperwork I was supposed to get my insurance reinstated. So they backed up and covered everything, but I still was technically without insurance from the day he died. It may have gone through the end of that month. I can't remember, but I was without insurance for a while, and I was fighting. And it wasn't necessarily the insurance company's fault. It was just things got clogged up along the way.
Right.
Like, he was a state employee. The state doesn't always move the quickest, right?
Yeah.
And the other problem was there were a lot of people. I figured out that there were people in positions that didn't exactly know what they were doing. They had either recently come into that job, or it had been added to their list of things to do, but they didn't really know how to do that job.
Right.
And so, there were a lot of things that were missed or overlooked as far as the paperwork goes. And I didn't know enough to know who to ask or how to ask. So that was a big issue for me. And I remember I was on the phone driving through town. I was driving down Main Street. I was hanging on the phone waiting on Anthem. I had Anthem at the time. I was waiting on them to help me. And I legitimately started having a panic attack while I was driving.
I can understand that.
I was having trouble breathing. I was in tears. I managed to pull over across from the courthouse there into that parking lot. I got to where I could safely pull over because I was like, I've got to pull over. Like, I do not need to be driving while trying to deal with this. And the lady on the phone, she was wonderful. Like, she talked me down. She talked me through it. She was like, we're going to get this. We're going to figure it out. And, like, she made sure, she kept back in touch with me. Like, she made sure it got fixed.
Yes,
She didn't just leave me hanging. And so the customer service for them was phenomenal.
Top
if
notch.
I could still afford their insurance, I would have it, but I can't afford it. But it was phenomenal. And so that was the moment at which I was like, and this was probably, so he passed away in February. This was probably, it was warm. So it was probably May at this point. Like, it was warm. And I was a point at which I was like, okay, I definitely need to go to therapy. Like, somebody had mentioned it to me. And it registered in my brain, I probably need to talk to somebody, but it was just one of the things on the list of things that I had to do, right? Like, it wasn't something that I had prioritized, because I had this long list of things that I had to prioritize, like finding health insurance, or, making sure I was going to be able to pay the bills, because his paycheck made the bulk of our income, or, trying to not overspend, which happens a lot to widows in those first few months.
Right, that's true. I think that dealing with insurance I deal with insurance on a daily basis, and that makes anybody need mental health, because it's a hard thing to navigate.
I cry every time I have to fight.
Oh, in a perfectly healthy situation, that's hard.
I cry when I have to deal with insurance anyway. But this legitimately, and then on top of that, I was feeling like I started feeling like I never felt any guilt about my husband's death. I had that moment of like, did he know how much I loved him?
I did that
and
too.
I do think he did. Like, I feel pretty confident that he knew how important he was to me, and that he knew how much I loved him. And yes, I do think that there were probably things I could have done differently or better, but I've never been that person that gives into that, like, what could have been kind of guilt, because I'm pretty much a person that, like, I make a decision, that's my decision, I'm going to deal with consequences. Like, I can't change it. It does me no good to worry about what could have been. Just going to deal with the consequences as they come. And that's always the person I've been. So I didn't have that kind of guilt. But the guilt I started getting was more like I felt like I felt guilty sharing things with other people. And they never made me feel that way. But it was more of a, like, I knew that if I told this person how I was really feeling, then they would be worried about me. And that would stress them out. And then I would feel bad because I'm stressing them out. So it was like a cycle of emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest reason why I started going to therapy, and I continue going to therapy next to the panic attack thing. But that's another big reason of why I started going to therapy and continue going to therapy. Because once a week I can sit down and just tell her everything that's going on.
And she's paid to hear it.
And she doesn't, and I don't feel guilty for unloading on her all the crap that's going on. And my therapist is great. And some weeks I don't have a whole lot to say, honestly. It's probably like pulling teeth to get things out of me. And some weeks I'm just like, oh, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't stop talking for the whole hour.
Right.
And there's, even though I've been talking for almost 10 minutes straight, there's not many times in my life where I talk for an hour without having to be, that doesn't happen very often.
I think a counselor knows the questions to ask that to get you. You may not even think I don't think I needed a counselor, and I'm not saying that like from some posture of piety. I mean, I was sad and still sad, and maybe depressed, but I couldn't not get out of bed. I had to get up and put one foot in front of the other and try that. But I really liked that she asked questions that made me think, oh, maybe I am, doing some things. And, she let me talk, but it was like having a friend.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate that I've had friends that keep letting me talk about Tim. But I'm like you. I don't know that I feel guilty about talking to people, but I don't want to make people sad. And so if I have something sad to say, it's better to say it to her than to say it to somebody.
My mom.
Yeah.
I love you, Mama.
And I don't know, and that's something about my mom. My mom lost her husband. My dad died a year before Tim did. And I never said to my mom, do you feel sad? I know I tried to take care of her. I tried to, have her busy and come with us places, and but I never stayed with her, and I did what people did for me, and that's a regret. But I'm like you. I think I have regrets about did Tim really know I loved him? Was I demonstrative enough to tell him how I felt? I always knew how he felt, and I tried to tell him how I felt. So but in my mind, Satan plays games with me and tries to tell me that you didn't really love him. If you have 1 minute of laughter, you didn't really love him. And I think that's what I unloaded with the counselor, is that I didn't want to feel bad if I felt good. That you're gonna have days where you.
So your guilt is more tied into if you are having a good day,
right?
Then you feel guilty.
Then I feel like I didn't love him enough because I should just be miserable.
I don't think that's because Tim wouldn't want you to be miserable.
I know that.
And I know our logic doesn't necessarily, your brain doesn't necessarily always listen to logic.
Yeah.
So I get that, but that is I've never really felt that way exactly because I know that Jim wouldn't want me to be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't want me to be, sad or anything like that. So I again, my guilt wasn't necessarily attached to that. It was more just like I said, and nobody made me feel that way either. I want to be clear about that. It wasn't like my family or friends were making me feel this way. It's just that I've always
you just didn't want to do.
Well, in my life, I've always been kind of the person that helps shoulder everybody's burdens. Like I don't. We all fall into certain roles in our families and friend circles. And I always feel like I was the person that people could tell things to. Mm-hmm. And so to be on the opposite side of that for me was really hard.
I've always been the happy-go-lucky person.
Yeah.
And I just always thought nothing really bad's ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
I never dreamed I'd lose my husband this early in my life. It took me forever to find him.
Right.
I shared that story.
Right.
So, finding him... late in life, I just thought, I'll have him. One thing that's been really helpful for me is I've had a couple of friends who've walked through grief journeys. They've actually lost children, but they've helped me navigate. One of them teaches a class called Grief Share, which is through a church. It's a Christian-based thing, but I never got in the group. But I was on their Facebook page, and a lot of the things people said and shared. Very helpful for me. It's helpful for me just to know that I'm not thinking wrong.
Right.
That what I'm thinking is what you think.
Right. It's completely normal.
Yeah. When you're grieving.
And I think I've shared this before. My therapist will say that grief is a weird process because everybody experiences it, but everybody experiences it in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shared process that we all experience, but it's unique because it's our own journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything that you're feeling is completely normal. Mm-hmm. It's just you have to figure out how to not move past it, because I hate that phrase. I hate that implication, I guess, but to move through it.
Yeah.
And to move along, the grief stays with you. It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, you're never going to go, yeah.
Like we said before, we said that in the last episode, that the grief stays with you. But you have to figure out how to move with the grief on into life.
And ride the waves. We talked about that. When we were trying to name this podcast, one thing we talked about is, riding the waves, swimming against the... Because that's what grief is. Yeah. It literally comes like an ocean. But it's an unpredictable ocean. It's not like lapping waves. Like, it's going to come every 5 minutes or something. Or not like contractions.
It's like that one that they see on cruise ships. There's a video of the cruise ships going through this certain pass where the water comes all the way up to the top of the ship. That's kind of what grief is like.
Yeah, and you don't know when it's going to come.
Sometimes it is the lapping gentle, and sometimes it's that big old wave that comes completely over top of you. And
I appreciated the lady I went to. I think I only went to session 4 times, but I appreciated from her standpoint. She sees a lot of people that I know, and she never said somebody said this. That's not her thing. I mean, she's not going to share what somebody else says. She's not going to share that,
but somebody else said.
But she did share with me that a lot of people had unpacked some feelings they were having after Tim's death, not just me.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know you're grieving with other people about the same person. That helped me.
See, for me, when I was looking for a therapist, that was one of the things, there were a lot of people that were on the fire department with Jim that I know because they told me, not because anybody, no professional told me, they told me. they started seeing a therapist because his death was kind of shocking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to see somebody locally, actually,
Yeah.
because I know people in several different therapy offices around town for various roles, and it's totally fine. It was just, it's kind of like your gynecologist. You don't want to run into them in Walmart, right? And I didn't want to necessarily run
They
into
wouldn't know you anyway. That's not the part they see. They'd be like, I don't know you with your
Although
clothes
my
on.
gynecologist did have a grandkid on my stepdaughter's
That's
swim
funny.
team once upon a time, many years ago, and she didn't realize it was me, I guess, because she saw so many patients. But yeah, that's kind of like your therapist is kind of like your gynecologist. You don't necessarily want to run into them in public, and so I actually went to a different city and found one that could do telehealth.
Yeah.
And so I do telehealth on my couch.
Yeah.
Or in my car. I've done it in the car before. Sometimes I just treat it like a phone call and just talk to her.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I talked to her when I was having to take my dog to Lexington, when I was having to take Luna.
Yeah.
The day that Luna passed away, I talked to her the whole way to Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was in a bad state that day, which we
Right.
actually had an appointment that day anyway. So I just talked to her in the car, the whole way up there. And by the time I got there, I was better. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what we were dealing with, and that was that. But you said something about you had to, you couldn't stay home, even though we wanted to stay home and become lumps on our couch. And it always makes me think of, the movie P.S. I Love You. And I don't know. It was like a month after Jim died. I decided I was going to watch that movie. I messaged my friend. I said, am I a masochist for wanting to sit here and watch that movie? I don't know if you've ever seen it. P.S. I Love You.
Oh, yes. I love it. Especially since the guy's Irish and my husband's Australian. I love it.
I didn't know. I was like, am I a masochist for watching this movie a month after my husband died? Because I just needed a good cry. But there's a quote in there that I always love where she's talking about her friend is trying to get her back into work. And, she says, you got to be rich to be insane. Losing your mind is not a luxury for the middle class. Yeah. And it always makes me laugh. And it reminds me of what you said. It was, yes, if I could stay home and be a lump on the couch or in my bed, I probably would have. But unfortunately, you got to be rich to do that, right? Like you can't just stay home and do that. You have to.
People ask me if would I retire, and I'm like, well, I can't afford to retire. And, I think about, I had an aunt that lost her husband in a plane crash when I was 8. And she had 3 kids.
Okay.
She had to keep going. So, that, I think that, maybe that part of it helps my mental health in knowing I had to get up and keep going. I had 2 weeks off. And then when I did go back to work, I'm very fortunate to have coworkers that took it easy on me, and I took like hour-and-a-half lunches and really eased back into it. People would come and go to lunch with me every day and things like that. And like I said, I've been really lucky not only with the counseling, and I think that's important to say is don't be afraid of it. Right. And don't think it's negative.
Right.
Like I said, we've moved into an age where mental health should not be a stigma.
Right.
You need that help, but also don't be afraid to know that to say I am depressed, you should be.
Right.
But as long as you don't get stuck in that depression.
Right.
Like
and it's okay. Sometimes it's okay if your serotonin is store bought too. If you need to get the medicine, get the medicine.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong
and
with
I did not sleep. I still haven't slept a good night.
I do struggle sometimes with that. And
2.5 years in, almost 3 years in, I still don't sleep well.
Somebody suggested that, and that is one thing I have been resistant about, because I did have somebody who was like, well, maybe you need to get some medicine for that. And I'm resistant about that because I don't do well with medicines that make you sleep sometimes.
Well, the medicine didn't help me.
I can't take melatonin because I can't function for 3 days. Yeah. If I take one dose of melatonin, I'm done for the next day.
Right.
And I can't do that. I can't not sleep for, I found some of these other things that are over-the-counter kinds that don't have melatonin in them that have worked for me. They help relax you, but they're not melatonin. But that's what I have done. And it's crazy as hell. I was using an essential oil diffuser.
Yeah.
Diffusing lavender and there's a couple of different ones. I can't remember all of them. I could look them up if somebody wants them. But that was something that actually did help me, surprisingly, because it was just that my brain was too anxious, I think.
Yeah. I fall asleep listening to TV.
Oh,
but then I wake up in the middle of the night, and more often than not, my mind is going a mile a minute. and I can't go back to sleep.
Right.
And I'll get up and do charts in the middle of the night, or I mean, it doesn't happen every night, but I wake up a lot in the night, and I don't know if it's because I'm not used to sleeping in the bed by myself, but and then Tim was a snorer. You didn't know you'd miss snoring.
Maybe you need to find you one of those.
A snore machine.
Yeah. I've started listening to, so I have a TV in my bedroom, and I used to fall asleep listening to the Home Shopping, like QVC,
Mm-hmm.
like that's what I fell asleep, just because it was mundane. And
I listen to Friends.
But now I've taken to turning on, in my living room, I will turn on like rain sounds, or gray noise, or white noise, or something, and turn it up really loud so I can hear it from the bedroom. So that seems to be working better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up downsizing my bed because the bed was just too big.
There's such an availability now of counselors, like you said. The telehealth is available.
Yeah.
There's groups.
There's apps.
I tried to start a group, but we didn't really get. We weren't successful.
I don't know how much effort we put into it. We might have to try again.
True. We might try that again.
You mentioned Grief Share, another group, and I think this is mostly about relating to people who've lost children. I don't know of any groups that are specifically for spouses, although I think one of our funeral homes has one. But I haven't gone. I've been invited, but they do it during lunch, and I can't.
They have some There's some churches.
But there's one here. There's one that I know of called Compassionate Friends that a lot of my friends who have lost children have found to be helpful. But I also think that mental health, sometimes it's more than not just therapy. It's not just that. Sometimes it's just doing a little self-care too. Like,
oh yeah, amen.
A massage can sometimes be a form of mental health, because one of the things we tend to do is, like, anxiety has been an issue for me.
Yeah.
Not so much that, like, I need the medication, but more of the stress of I have to handle things. Because I developed TMJ, which I had TMJ before, but it flared up bad after Jim died. And that's something that I am still dealing with. So, I get a massage occasionally to help with that. Or, I actually, another thing that I started doing, and I think has helped me, is I got a vitamin D light.
That's
Happy
pretty
Light.
good, yeah.
Because especially that first year, when it got cold in the fall, it hit me so
Seasonal
hard.
affective, yeah.
I had never really experienced seasonal affectiveness before, but that fall was horrible. I was just in a bad place. I was in a bad funk. And so I bought one to try it. My therapist said, some people find success with it. And it did seem to help.
Yeah.
And I still have it. I haven't used it as much lately. Like, I haven't needed it as much. But I still have it. And I do think there's some merit to those things.
Oh, yeah. I think exercise has helped me.
Yeah.
Like, just taking a walk. That's good for me. The right diet. Because it's not about what you physically look like, but what you physically feel like.
Right.
If I don't eat right, if I gain weight, of course I have a heart problem too. If I gain weight and I get heavy, it stresses my heart. So if I walk and get sunlight and things like you said, it is positive. And I'm a facial girl, and I like to get facials, and that helps me. And sometimes you'll get a facial or a massage, and you'll just find yourself crying,
Right.
because somebody's, I miss
So
that
relaxing.
physical touch so badly. And I think that's why I can't sleep, is because I slept touching.
You need to get
Tim.
you one of those fake men pillows.
Yeah, I've got a bear. I've got a bear that has his jeans on it. A friend of mine made a bear out of his clothing, and it has his favorite pair of jeans that still has paint on them. And I lay my hand on that leg of that bear, and that, it's somewhat comforting, but nothing's the real thing,
Oh, no,
So,
no.
But I do think you're right, and I still try to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
All through the process, right after Tim died, is trying to stay hydrated, so that I didn't get sick.
I think you cry so much.
Oh yeah.
You kind of
You don't
need
realize that.
It is dehydrating, and then people bring in food. Sometimes that food it's not
really healthy.
It's not always healthy, but it's easy food. Like, you do a lot of easy food, and I have a really hard time with diet. Like, that is something I struggle with, because I'm not much for cooking. So I do a lot of, like, a protein shake or this, like I do.
Me too.
I'm a snacker. I'll eat popcorn and, or peanut butter crackers, like, instead of making full meals, I do that a lot, because
Well, it's just
I'm
me.
just-
I mean,
it's just
I'm not
me.
going to make a full meal for me.
Yeah, And if I make a full meal, it's going to last me 2
I didn't make
days.
a full meal for me and Tim either.
Right. Well,
love is hard. He didn't get food.
Jim did on occasion, but it wasn't often that I cooked.
Yeah,
but
I
do agree with you about the walking for sure, because, that is with my business. I do a lot of walking, and I have noticed those days that I'm in a funk, and then I go walk a dog a mile, and I come back and I'm like, I am feeling better because it gave me a chance to get out of my head. I have to focus on the dog and the cars and it's just I have to put my phone away because I don't have my phone out when I walk dogs. So that is just a good solid half an hour where I can't focus on anything, except sometimes I do my personal, internal monologue the whole time, but I can't focus on my phone or Facebook or the 90 blue million things that are pulling my attention.
And if you focus on the negative,
you will.
You're going to focus on the negative. You can't.
And that's true.
I've got friends that, you've got to say in your mind, I'm going to turn this around.
Right.
And sit in the sun, taking the walk, watching another TV show that's happy. You chose to watch P.S. I Love You, and I get that. And I get
sometimes
needing a good
you need to cry.
I get that. But if you watch the news every day and you're paranoid about what's going to happen, you're just going to be more. You've got to give yourself out. You've got to give yourself those positive outlets.
I also went on a kick, talking about P.S. I Love You. I went on a kick about July after he passed away. So this was, a few months after he passed away. I started watching Christmas movies.
And I'm all about
I started
Hallmark
watching
Christmas
all these
movies.
like Hallmark-esque, because I don't have Hallmark, but Hallmark-esque Christmas movies that I could find on, my different streaming platforms. I would watch those and I have a couple of them that became like my favorites. So when I'm in I just need something, I'll go back and watch those again and put them back on. They're so cheesy, but I love it because it's just something to get you out of your head. Sometimes you just need to get out of your head.
Even before I married Tim, my sad time movie was Gidget. You don't even know what Gidget is.
I do know what Gidget is.
Gidget Goes Hawaiian is, if I tell you it's a Gidget kind of day, that means I am sad.
Yeah.
And so when I have and then Tammy, the Tammy movies, if I watch Gidget and Tammy, I am some sad. And so I've had some Gidget days. And then, like I've said before, I watch a lot of Cinderella. I don't know if I just am waiting if I felt my prince is gone or what. But, those are mental health things for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it uplifts me to watch that. I was a Hallmark junkie before Tim died. He called it what did he call it? He made fun of me for my Hallmark, but I love it, and I love it even more. Yeah. Cheese TV, that's what he called it, cheese TV. And it is, and it's predictable, but I needed predictable.
Sometimes you do. I'm really bad about, I will get my book app out, I'll have my crochet out, and I'll have the TV going all at the same time.
Oh yeah.
I won't actually be watching the TV, it's just for the noise. But I'll have my book app and I'll be reading my books while I'm crocheting, and that's my, decompression of and I will stop answering my phone. My mom used to worry because I wouldn't answer. She'd start texting me, and sometimes she still does. If I don't answer, it's been several hours and I've not answered her. But really, it's just I'm in my zone and I'm pushed out the world, because I've noticed if I focus on social media, you talked about focusing on the negative. If I spend too much time scrolling social media or too much time looking, it was just affecting my head. So I'll just read. I read my cheesy little romance chick flick storybooks, or I like some cheesy little supernatural stuff sometimes, or I don't know, whatever, or I'll watch my cheesy little movies, or my Leverage, which is my absolute one of my favorite shows, or I'll watch that kind of stuff and just decompress and not deal with the other world, because sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to shut things off. Sometimes you need to get away from things,
and I think you have to make a choice. I mean, I know there are people who are crippled by things, and I get that.
That's completely different. We're not talking about that. That person is a
But if somebody makes a suggestion to you, don't say, that's not going to help me.
Right. You don't know.
I mean, you don't know. So if it's baby steps.
Right.
You're on the couch. You can't get off the couch. You're crying. Okay, I get that. If someone says to you, let's get up and take a walk, don't say, that's not going to help me.
Right.
So I think you have to make a choice to start small.
And sometimes it's even just, let's get up and step outside.
Yeah.
You don't even have to take a walk.
Let's open the curtains.
Just open the door and step outside. and get some sunshine, or just,
let's see something positive. Let's read something
Right.
positive. Let's hear something positive. It might be you can't even read it yet. You might need to hear it.
right,
Bird chirping.
right.
And
You mentioned something, if you focus on the negative, that's all you'll see. And that's something I heard a marriage therapist say that. Jim and I, we did a study at church, and it was a marriage study. And that was one of the things that that the speaker was talking about. I think he was a therapist. Was that if you focus on the negative things in your spouse, that's all you're ever going to see.
Oh, yeah.
And that's applicable to all of life. Like,
Oh, yeah.
in your job, in the people around you, in your friends. If you focus on the socks on the floor, they never pick up socks. Sock is always on the floor. That sock
Right.
is. Then eventually all you see is the socks on the floor, and you don't notice that they have washed the dishes or fixed you your favorite cup of coffee, or you notice this. My coworker always does this wrong. Always does this wrong. You don't see the good things that they do.
I agree.
And I think sometimes we get so focused on the negative side of things that we have to challenge our brain to see that good. And it is hard. It can be hard, especially
I was
when
thinking
you're in a funk.
today as I was cleaning the toilet, how much less I have to clean the toilet because I'm a woman and men just aren't good at that. But I'm saying I would clean this toilet 15 times
Right.
a day if I just had him here to make it messy, and then you start to feel that guilt about, did I harp too much on this? And neither one of it, I mean, I don't really know that we harped on that, but I think that's the biggest thing about mental health is I have to tell myself, I know that he knew I loved him,
Yeah.
and I knew that he loved me,
Yeah.
and I can't be afraid to speak to someone who can maybe get me out of my own head.
Right.
And I
Sometimes
don't have too much more to offer on that. I wish I was a mental health expert, but I'd say
I think
don't be afraid to get the help you need.
I think this is good from our perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll end it with that of, don't be afraid to get the help.
Don't be afraid
Don't be
to-
afraid to talk. There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It's no worse than a diabetic needing insulin. It's no worse.
No stigma.
It's just another doctor
Mm-hmm.
that we have been provided to have. And there's different levels, some,
It's kind of like a podcast.
right? It's
You just get to talk and they have to listen.
it's just somebody you get to talk to and they have to listen.
But it'll talk back
Except
to you.
they get paid to listen.
Right. And they will give you advice, and
Yes.
if you take it, it will be very helpful.
Yes.
I agree.
So, and it doesn't always have to be a therapist. Sometimes it's just
A
self-care.
trusted friend. I agree.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just, a massage.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
Take care of yourself.
Yes.
Or as that little girl said, take care of yourself. Like it.
Well, I think that'll wrap it up for today.
See you next week.
Thank you all. See you next week. And we'd love to have some feedback on what you'd like us to talk about or cover or anything
Just don't
else.
tell us if you'd like us to be quiet. Because it's not going to work.
This is for us, not you, really. But
That's right.
we're having fun, and we hope you are too. So, see
See
you
ya.
next week. Thank you for tuning in to Can't Find My Brain for the Fog, discussing love, loss, and life after with Kendra and Gina. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look for new ones each week. We're going to shoot for Mondays. If you would like to give us some feedback or maybe leave us a topic idea or question, you can find us on Instagram, Can't Find My Brain for the Fog, and we would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in.